Hey everyone, and welcome to Almost Cancelled. I am Peter, and I'm going to be talking about The Haunting of Hill House, Season 1, Episode 6 is called Two Storms. So full spoilers for the episode, as always. This might be my favourite episode of the show so far, because Episode 5 was good. Bet Neck Lady was very good. Episode 6, I think it's purely down to taste, but I think I like such a focused episode like this, that is a bottle episode essentially. I mean, it's a bottle episode in two timelines where we have the mansion stuff as well, of course, at Hill House, but where it's just this is when Luke and Steve and Hugh, the father, arrive at Shirley's, the night before the funeral, and it's all this night, and it's a stormy night. Let's get the atmosphere going, thunder and lightning, and it's just them kind of airing out their grievances and. At first being civil and acting like you do at a funeral, very remorse, very, very calm. Everyone's sort of treading very lightly. But then as, more booze is consumed, particularly by Theo, who consumes a lot of booze, things start to come out. Confrontations that have been brewing start to come up. And that's essentially the premise of this episode. That is what it is, with a really sad tinge at the end. Because I think obviously the mirroring of the two plots was quite clear, very quickly. And obviously another thing that's very worth mentioning is the filmmaking in this episode, where I actually thought it was going to be one shot the entire time, and at least presented as one shot. When I say one shot the entire time, there's usually tricks, there's usually hidden cuts so that they can actually make it more manageable to actually film. Just kind of like how Birdman was presented as one shot, but it's actually a lot of still long shots on their own. I mean, each shot will be still impressively long, but to get it all work. Mr. Robot did an episode like that last year where it was presented as one shot, but there's hidden cuts here or there. And there may have been one right at the start, but the first time I noticed a cut, once I realised there was a really long shot, and it just kept, the camera just kept moving around and panning from people, person to person, and, as people were entering the building and following them up to the casket and back, and, all this, like, it was really nice. It gave it this energy, this sense of, I think the great thing about camera choreography here, where you have, like, a sweeping shot with a large group of people. One of the effects that I really like of it is that it makes the viewer feel that they're in the room, in the sense that they're part of the dance, right? And when I say dance, obviously I just mean, people moving around in clusters, going from one location to the next, the placements, the blocking of the scene. You feel like you're an active participant in the scene, as opposed to just, and don't get me wrong, there's obviously an effect as well to achieve by just sitting back and viewing it as a third person static viewer, right? That also has an effect. That has a very cold effect that you might want, whereas this is a little bit different. This feels like you're in the thick of it and you're moving around, and it's got this energy to it. Filmmaking, you use different things for different emotions, different feelings that you want from the camera work, and I feel like this made me feel like I'm in the mix, right? But the first cut I noticed, once I'd realised, wait, we've been on the same cut for a long time here. The first cut I noticed was when we transitioned to the first flashback with Hugh, where he goes looking for a bathroom and the chandelier falls once he's in Hill House. Then it cuts to his face. It actually doesn't cut to someone else in the flashback, it cuts to him again, but then it goes from there into the young Hugh, and we essentially have, again, one big take, or at least presented as one big take for the first flashback. And it does cut here or there, but it does definitely keep this feeling of mostly long takes throughout most of the episode, with cuts every so often to split it up. But so I really like that. I really like that from a filmmaking perspective. You get to do that thing that's really effective in horror movies, which I now refer to as the Ninja Cat. The Ninja Cat scare. If you've ever seen Ninja Cat, you can Google Ninja Cat on the YouTubes. You know what I mean? Google on the YouTubes. Hey, Google owns YouTube now, so I mean, you're basically Googling when you're searching on YouTube. There's this cat that's coming towards the camera, and whoever's holding the camera like hides behind the door, then pops the camera back out, and the cat's gotten closer. Right? I mean, so when I say Ninja Cat, what I mean is that the camera will pan away from something and pan back, and now someone will be there or not be there, as the case may be. Right? That's what I now refer to. That I have now coined that as a technical filmmaking term. That is called the Ninja Cat. And even though it existed long before this Ninja Cat video, I'm just using that to name it. For all I know, there might be an old terminology for it. There might be something like a puffalope. Puffalope. That's what the word. That was the fake word that they were talking about. Nelly using as a kid, right? A padded envelope, which, to be fair, don't really have a name. I guess it's just a padded envelope, but you know what? There is actually a name that I grew up with. I'd call that a jiffy bag, which isn't just me making that up. That's something that I've heard other people use as jiffy bag. But I think that's very regional. But Puffalopes sounds as good as jiffy bag does. It's as good as any. Why not? So yeah, so we have this episode where they're all reminiscing about Nell, and then the emotions come out about the book. We find out that the Theo reveals that she took the blood money, quote unquote, from Stephen, and you feel bad for Shirley, because Shirley starts going off in one about how she should be guilty about taking that money, and you were taking that money while you were living here free of rent, and she really goes in for it. And Stephen's like, you're embarrassing yourself, and she is embarrassing herself, because you're waiting for her husband. You're waiting for Kevin to jump in and say it, and he finally does. He finally says, we took it as well. How do you think we've been staying afloat when you've been giving freebies out to like everyone who looks sad? Which in a funeral home would be a lot of people. And she feels devastated, and you get why she's devastated. You get why this would be humiliating for her. But this is when it kind of bubbles over, and then we cut back to we cut back and forth. And as much as I'm saying we cut back and forth between this stuff and the Hill House stuff, it's not a lot of cuts, in the sense that it's not a lot of separate scenes. It's not a lot of little back and forths. It's very big chunks, right? I think Hill House, outside of like towards the end where it maybe cuts back a little bit back and forth when it gets to the ending point, for the most part, it will just go to Hill House and stay there for like 5 minutes or so, and then finally come back. And it only does that maybe 3 times before the end of the episode. Like, it's big meaty chunks, and then it transitions back to the present, to the funeral home. My cats are chasing each other around. If you're hearing the pitter patter of tiny paws, you menaces. So you have the mystery in the Hill House itself. Again, I really love just this one night. There's a storm. You've got all the kids scared. Chandelier falls, and they're trying to deal with it. They're getting flashlights. They're doing trying to deal with the situation, and Nellie just disappears. My Wesker is just chasing back and forth from room to room. This is really distracting right now. He's so inconsiderate. That door's getting shut in a minute, you little shit. Anyway, so you have them searching for Nellie. Nellie just disappears. She disappears whilst Theo's holding her hand. She's got a glove on, but she's holding her hand, and it just cuts to, and she's just not there. And Theo's still got her hand out as if she was still holding it, as if she's not even noticed that the hand's gone. And they begin this search, and we get some really effective horror stuff here, where they're looking from room to room, and Olivia has this creepy moment where she checks in the bedroom, and I'm pretty sure it's the bedroom where Hazel lived, right? Because on the way out, we see the old woman on the bed in the background, and I thought, is that Hazel? Is that Hazel Hill? Got to have alliteration. It's like a superhero name. You got to have the alliteration, right? Hazel Hill. And then she's the creepy kid in the wheelchair, who did not look like Abigail. I'll just point out that was not Abigail. That was a young boy, and the wheelchair rolls away, and again the camera's part of the dance. The camera's part of and again, because the camera is our eyes, right? Because of that, it can play tricks with us intentionally. So we follow the wheelchair and we come back, and all of a sudden she's not there, and this is where we transition to Hugh, who now is like, wait, where's my wife? Where's she gone? And he starts looking for her. And we get that she's off in the distance at the end of the hall, and she walks down the hall, and then she's not there when he gets to the end and turns around, and back and forth. What made this effective for me was, one, that it was all one shot. I think that adds a lot to a sequence like this. And then secondly was, whenever she popped up behind him in a new location, it didn't make it obvious until a few seconds later, right? You can make her out if you were looking for her before the lightning flashed. And I did, almost every time. Because I was really paying attention at this point, because I'm looking for the hidden ghost, right? I'm looking for hidden figures around in the background. And every time before the lightning made it clear where she was in the background, you could still make her out if you were looking, and I really appreciated that. I like that type of interactivity with horror stories like this, where, yeah, eventually they'll make sure that enough gets across so that the story works. Even if you aren't paying that much attention, or at least not that you're not paying attention. You should be paying attention to everything you watch, because otherwise, why watch it? You're not giving it the you're not giving the credence it deserves if you're not paying attention. Anything you think is going to be good, you should pay attention to. But what I mean is, if you're someone who doesn't notice small details like that, if you're someone who doesn't notice the hidden, if you will, and I don't always, like, I was looking for it here because I'm paying attention, especially for this now. But if you're someone, so for the people who don't instantly, aren't scouring the screen for it, they get the obvious sign in a second. But if you are looking for it, it's already there. And one of the biggest things I can compliment this is not even just horror, any type of story, any type of film of any kind, is when I want to feel like I'm giving the film a handshake. And what I mean by that is that stuff that's really lowbrow, stuff that's really in your face and really unsubtle. Let's compare it to a CW TV show for a second, right? A CW TV show doesn't trust the viewer to get things and understand them. The CW show basically reaches all the way to your hand, which is still down by your side, and grabs it by force and thoroughly shakes it and says, here, you don't understand what's happening, you're getting a handshake, right? Whereas good storytelling just extends the hand enough, and you have to do the other. You have to go halfway yourself. You have to put your hand out as well. And what I mean by that is the idea that you get enough information from what's going on to then feel like you're putting the pieces together yourself. And it's a fine line. It's a fine line where the storyteller has to make sure they're not being intentionally obtuse, right? They have to give you enough, but at the same time, not do so much that it feels like they're beating you over the head with something, right? And I think that's what I mean when I say you want to feel like you're engaged, and engagement means that you're kind of figuring some of it out yourself, that you're kind of having to put some thought into it. And that's what I mean by you have to complete the second half of the handshake. It can't just be a one-way thing. And I think with horror stories in particular, I think I'm going on a bit of a tangent here because of this, but I want to compliment how well this does this here, where again it gives you that chance to complete the handshake yourself before it makes it too obvious. Is that I feel like with horror specifically, a lot of people who don't watch a lot of movies or don't watch a lot of horror movies don't like horror. And you get the obnoxious teenagers at the theatre, right, when you go to see a horror movie, who are determined to show everyone in the room that they're not scared by this, that this is stupid. And there's people who are like, horror movies aren't scary. And horror movies don't scare me, really, right? 99 times out of 100, even the ones I like, don't really scare me. I feel a bit tense, I feel excited by the way it's handled or whatever. But you have to be willing to be scared. You have to be willing to go for the ride. You have to complete the handshake. If you're going to stand there and say, nope, I'm a badass who's not scared of anything, you're going to have to prove it to me, almost nothing's going to break through that. Even the best of the best. You have to be willing to give yourself up for the ride. You have to be willing to be part of the experience. And you have to want to be part of the experience. And I feel like feeling like you're completing the handshake is good for any genre, but I feel like for horror, it's almost required for everyone to say, hey, no, you have to be willing to put your hand out, right? And maybe something creepy will grab it. And one of those cats has just used the litter tray, and I smell cat piss. I'm not happy. These cats are interfering with this discussion at every turn of the road. I'm not happy. But that's a very good scene. And we get the mirror, or the windows exploding and all the rest of it, and then that's not happened. This seems to be like, where Hugh really gets his first full-on taste of weird shit happening that he can't explain. And then he finds, back almost where she started, where she first dropped the flashlight, he finds Olivia. And she's like, oh, I was looking in the rooms and I was right here, almost like she'd never moved, almost like she was there the whole time. And I actually was thinking about that in this scene. So later on, when it turned out that little Nellie was actually still in the main foyer of the mansion and was there the entire time, and said that she was screaming over and over again and no one would hear her, no one would see her, I was like, oh, that's what I was already thinking about with Olivia, is that she was there the whole time. When he found her back where she first started, and she didn't really seem to know that anything had transpired, I was thinking that that's maybe what happened to her as well. And of course, as soon as it gets to this point, I get what it's doing thematically. I get that in present day, they're at the funeral home, they're talking about her, and she's there. She's screaming for attention. She's screaming to let them know that she's there and she can hear them, but they won't hear her. Except Hugh a little bit. Hugh sees her briefly, of course. In fact, Hugh and Luke even kind of acknowledge with each other that the bent neck lady the whole time might have been her. Because he says he thinks so when Luke asks him, and we have that stunningly sad final moment where it, and again, I'd already figured it out. I'd already completed the handshake where I got that the thematic point that we're making is that this is how it mirrors each other. Is that in present day at the funeral home, she's still there and they're not hearing her, they're not seeing her. But again, the episode by the end, it makes that final sad moment where it kind of confirms it for everyone. It confirms it for anyone who's maybe not figured that out yet. And for those who have figured it out, it's a nice, poignant, touching end to it, where you hear the dialogue of her as a child screaming, I'm not there any, I'm here, you're not hearing me. Please, no one was hearing me. You hear her crying, and you see her standing there, with the bent neck. And it's a really nice shot. And it mirrors some of the shots inside the Hill House segments. And speaking of transitioning and seeing them as kids, I liked it when Hugh first arrived, and it does the 360. The first time we see everyone facing them, they're all the children actors. And then it comes back around again, and they're back to being the adult actors. And I like the idea that to him, you just get that classic thing that to their parents, their kids are always their babies, right? They're always kids to them, no matter how old they get. And also the idea here that it's heavily implied that they've not all been all together in a long, long time. And Nell was trying for a long time, or their father wanted to try for a long time, and never quite did. And now, they're all together, but barring her technically, and it's because of these awful circumstances. So obviously, some other things here is that Steve wants to confront his father, and no, this is mental illness. And she, because he admits that he did speak to her on that day. I actually thought there was going to be more of a guilt trip for both Shirley and Stephen not returning her phone call. Stephen returns it as a voicemail, but neither one of them got to actually talk to her. I thought there may be more of a guilt trip for that. There hasn't been yet. That could still pop up. But Hugh admits that he did speak to her, and he hesitates, but says the bent neck lady was back, because he knows how that's going to go down. And of course Stephen flies off. This is things heat up from here, and this is where the issue of mental illness, and Stephen thinks no, she's mentally ill like her mother was, and you didn't you refused to accept it, you lied about it, you hid details, and they also forced them to give up more details about that's what leads to the revelation of the bent neck lady, because they want to know, okay, what was the details here, who found her, and we find out Mrs. Dudley found her and threw up when she found her, and so on. So all these details. Now the other thing about Q as well that we have to bring up is that he is talking to someone. Every so often he kind of puts his head to the side and he kind of mutters something to someone as if he's talking to a ghost the entire time. You would assume it's his wife, but maybe not. I don't know what other ghost would specifically be attached to him in this capacity. But again, I think I like how the present day and flashback stuff mirror each other here. I like how it's very focused, and because we've not seen all these characters together up until this point, it felt like a really smart move to make it a big deal. To say, no, this entire episode is going to be about the fact that they're together again. And all the things that we've been holding inside are going to start to bubble over. And I also like that, just other than some speculation before he arrives, because we start with just Shirley and Theo talking about the guys coming. And they speculate about Luke and his condition, and they should maybe hide their purses. Once he arrives and they see how he's acting, despite the fact that he looks pretty beat up, they basically just drop any notion that he's a risk right now. They kind of tell that he's taking this seriously, and I like that. I like that they can tell that about their brother. And of course, Luke has a hard time accepting Nell, and this conversation about Theo bringing up that she doesn't look like she's sleeping, and that's not a criticism of the work that Shirley did. It's just they always say that in movies, but she doesn't. She looks dead, to put it bluntly. And there's just a lot of little details here that I really liked. We should mention, obviously, the power going out felt very supernatural. But I'd almost be inclined to say that Nell herself did that. in a way to try and get attention, to get their attention, perhaps. That's just a leap, more of a leap than anything else. But I'd be curious to guess it. And then of course there's an awkward moment where it looks like Shirley finds Kevin and Theo in the middle of a moment. I'll say, almost like they had just been kissing or were maybe about to kiss. We'll see where that goes. I don't have a whole lot to add about that. Obviously, he chases after her, and she makes a run for it. But we'll see where that goes. I mean, obviously, up until now, we've been under the assumption that she's gay. Maybe she is bisexual. Maybe they've just not mentioned that as much. But we'll see what that is. I mean, this could be down to how drunk she is, because they clearly showed in this episode that she is very, 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 very drunk. But like I say, I want to see where that goes before I really comment on it too much. Here's a nice touch I want to bring up, though. So towards the end of the episode, the casket falls over, right? Again, it's kind of supernatural. The casket just kind of tumbles over in the dark. And I like that as soon as it does, the fighting completely stops, and everyone in the room works together to put Nell upright. Not up on the stand again, but just sort of, because she sort of, tipped over on the floor. And they just kind of, but it takes all of them. It takes Stephen, it takes Hugh, it takes Luke, and I think Shirley might be there. But it took everyone in the room to set her right. The idea that they dropped every fight they had right then to do this for their sister, and I almost feel like it was a mission statement for the rest of the show. Is like whatever they're going to do now is going to be for her because of what's happened to her. And in a way, their mother as well, of course, which happened to her a long time ago. But I thought that was a really sweet moment because they all just shut up and they all went to go and help her, and it felt genuine. And I think that's the big compliment I could give from this is the fighting felt earned. Everything felt like it had been well established enough that it didn't just feel like cheap TV drama. It felt like no, we've established these characters enough, and all these little things have been bubbling over since the start of the show that it feels earned and justified to have them fighting like this. So that's very good. And like I say, we end with that really poignant, sad moment of Nell begging to be heard, which is really, really sad. It's especially now that she's actually dead, it feels like she isn't a scary ghost anymore. It feels like she's a really sad ghost, and that's really upsetting. Now she's kind of met up with her ghostly end, if you will. Whereas before it was the fear of death, I guess. Whereas now it's just actual her as death. And it's just a sad existence, and that's really upsetting. But yeah, so I should also mention that when he's asked to talk about the mother, and because Luke says, "I don't think Nell killed herself, and I don't think Mother did either, did she?" And Hugh says, "That's a complicated question." So, if I was to guess right now, I'd say Hugh had to kill her, but he had to kill her because she turned into something else, and there was no saving her. Right, I feel like that's the obvious thing to go with right now, but again, there could be more things to it. There could be more to dive into that when we get to deeper into the story. So it appears next episode will be the funeral itself, and we'll see where it goes from there. I think it's interesting now that we've maybe dropped the character focused episodes now that everyone's together, and that makes a lot of sense to me. This was kind of Hugh focused. I feel like the really Hugh focused episode though come when we get all the answers. Whether that's 9 or 10 or something in that region. But yeah, we're in the second half now, and the show's still very good. In fact, it's probably the best. I mean, 5 and 6 are probably the best 2 episodes out of the ones we've had so far. So I am into it, needless to say. So there you go. That is episode 6 of The Haunting of Hill House. I forgot to mention the last episode, by the way, that before Nell went into the Hill House, there was the porch light flashed twice. I put a comment on the YouTube video, but I did want to mention that was something that was set up. So, and yeah, there's a speculation, of course, is it really Olivia's ghost in there, or is it something else just pretending to be her? Whereas I feel like the bent neck lady now is very clearly Nell, right? The way this one ended, no, that is Nell. That is the. And again, like I was saying a lot in the last episode about, okay, if you take away the actual supernatural horror element, what does this represent? And I feel like the ghost of Nell being in that room with them as they're all fighting is just, again, it's a representation of the ghost of Nell being in there. Like, the ghost of Nell is carried with them, and her presence is felt because everything is revolving around her, because of the sadness for her, because of the stories about her, because of the all this that's coming up, and her crying for help and wanting to be heard is almost like, it started off being about her, but by the time it got to the end of the night, it was all these other things bubbling out and fighting and about the mother and the history, and it was all the anger and the rage, and it was almost drowning out the genuine sadness for her, as opposed to, again, I'm just trying to. If you take out the horror, what was the scene? What does it mean? If there's no actual, if it's not real, what does it mean? Not that I'm saying it isn't real. I think it's real in this show because it's a supernatural horror show. But I think one of the ways to analyze these things is to say, okay, if you take away the actual horror sci-fi element, what's it saying? And it should still be saying something. It can still be fun if it's not, but it's usually better when it is. And here we are. So there we go. That is episode 6 of The Haunting of Hill House. It was very bloody good. So I'll be back with episode 7 sometime very soon. Look forward to that. Let me know what you thought of this one in the comments below. Like and subscribe and all that stuff. It helps out a lot. If you want to support the channel and the show and everything we do here, head over to patreon.com/MailedFuzzTV, and you can do that over there for as little as $1 per month, and it is a big help. We do appreciate it a lot if you go over and just have a look. But that is me. So thank you once again for watching or listening. Always appreciate it. Keep watching TV, guys. Have you got any vanilla?